everybody, Jennifer Anderson here. If you take a look around your home, you will probably find many modern conveniences that we all take for granted that were invented back in the 1920s. One of those items is the Band-Aid. According to DoctorsReview.com, Band-Aids were invented in 1920 by Earl Dixon, an employee of Johnson & Johnson. Mr. Dixon's wife was apparently very clumsy in the kitchen and was constantly burning and cutting herself, needing bandages. Back then, you couldn't go to the bathroom closet and grab a Band-Aid, apply it, and go back to work. You had to fabricate your own homemade bandage out of tape and gauze. As you can imagine, these homemade bandages fell apart as soon as they got wet. They were bulky and got in the way of Mrs. Dixon's everyday chores. Mr. Dixon, in an effort to make a better product, combined the gauze and the tape and created a Band-Aid. As wonderful as his idea was, they were not an immediate hot seller, so in a stroke of marketing genius, Johnson & Johnson donated a bunch of Band-Aids to the Boy Scouts of America, because who needs Band-Aids more than a bunch of Boy Scouts? The mothers of these Boy Scouts immediately loved the product, and ever since then, Band-Aids have been very popular in the homes across America. Another invention of the 1920s that you probably can find in your own home is frozen food, maybe even bird's eye frozen food. According to biography.com, Mr. Clarence Birdseye created the frozen food process in 1925. He came up with this idea during a fishing trip in Canada. He noticed that it was so cold in Canada that as soon as the fish came out of the water, it froze almost immediately. He happily noticed that when you thawed out the fish and ate it, it tasted almost as fresh as it did when it was caught. He thought if you can do this with fish, surely you can do it with fruits and vegetables, and he was right. Thanks to Mr. Birdseye's ingenuity, today we still enjoy frozen fruits and vegetables throughout the year. If you want a strawberry dessert in December with your Christmas dinner, you can have that. And it's probably going to be almost as delicious as it was back in the summer when it was picked and frozen. Again, you can probably find Birdseye frozen foods in your freezer. If not, you can go to any grocery store and there will surely be some in the freezer section. Another item that was invented in the 1920s that you probably do not have in your home but is still in use is the modern polygraph or lie detector. The lie detector is an improvement upon an earlier version that measured only blood pressure. Polygraph means many writings. It was given that name because it recorded blood pressure, pulse rate, breathing rate, and perspiration. The earlier version only recorded blood pressure. This new polygraph was invented by John Larson, according to BBC.com, and it was invented in an effort to spare suspects abuse by the police. Apparently back then, and still today, that's a problem. During interrogation, sometimes an overzealous police officer will get violent trying to get a confession out of a suspect, and the hope was that the suspects could simply submit to a polygraph test and be cleared or found guilty of a crime. Today, while the polygraphs are still used, they're not 100% foolproof and they're not always admissible in a court of law. They are an awesome invention of the 1920s that is still around today, though. In closing, again, a lot of the things that were invented in the 1920s we still use every day today, even in our own homes. It's fun to look around and imagine what might be invented and what might be in the lives of ourselves or our children 50 or 100 years from now that we'll take for granted and will make our lives easier. Thank you.